All right, hello. This is your host, Geoff Antonio, with your show, Swagger Swerve, a podcast where we dig into the swagger. That's the creative source that you have within you that you put out, whether it be music, TV, film, songwriting. And the swerve is the hustle in which you put together your hustle, you put together your art and put it out there into the world. As you know, you may be the most talented individual out there, but if you do not swerve, none of it matters. And speaking of swagger and swerve, I have my guest, the great Dr. Wes, here today. Hello, Dr. Wes. How you doing?
Hello, Geoff. Doing great.
Good. I'm so happy to have you here on the show.
Happy to be here.
Yes. It's a true honor and privilege to have you, and I'm just so excited. I've got so many questions I want to delve into, and but first off, I just want to say hello, man.
Yeah, hello to you too, man.
Yeah.
Glad to be here, man. Glad to be a part of your podcast.
I so much appreciate it. So we met recently at the ASCAP Expo, and you really stood out to me because I said, here's a guy who's dynamic. He's got multiple things going on. And so to the audience that doesn't know, Dr. Wes is a doctor. He's an actual doctor, medical doctor, and he's a musician, filmmaker / writer. And I find that totally dynamic. I've only met 2 or 3 of you. You do exist, but when I do, I always take notice.
We're unicorns.
You are the unicorns out there because there's not many, and I find that fascinating. Is that something that, how you can delve into both sides of the brain? Is that something that you were always that way, or is that a recent development?
Yeah, it's a good question. My friends kind of call me an accidental polymath because it wasn't something I started out doing. I kind of started out mainly a left brain guy, sort of got into it very early on in sort of kind of math contests and scientific research, ultimately a medical career, which was my earliest passion. But, just kind of going through school, I was into writing, and I was into music, playing guitar and singing, but, never really into it that much initially, and I guess even more importantly, never really thought I had the talent to be worth going into it much. But I kind of held that right brain side of myself open when I was going through college and then ultimately in a medical school when I was kind of having to put aside the right brain stuff for a while. As things turned out, I eventually developed what I think you'd call sort of a synergy where, for various reasons, I began to pursue that right brain side a little more seriously. And I sort of found, interestingly enough, that as some great composers and authors and other creative types before me had done, that I could find a way to use the right brain part of myself, the sort of kind of creative side, to spur my left brain tasks, and at the same time use my left brain side to spur the right brain tasks.
That's interesting.
Creatively, yeah.
So you think one side kind of helps the other. If you delve into the right side of the brain, sometimes it helps the left.
Cross-pollinates it, yeah. It's there's a certain kind of, I feel like a certain connection that comes up in terms of opening your mind up to sort of a realm of possibilities when you're for example, if I'm doing technical tasks in medical research, which I do right now, in bioinformatics, which I used to do in gene therapy, there's a kind of sort of openness to thought that makes a person a lot more productive in this field. And I've sort of kind of found that getting into that mood, getting to what one might call a zone or a flow state, as people call it, it's a whole lot easier said than done because it's not something you can necessarily will yourself to. But even before I got into making music myself, I did find that music of a certain type did sort of kind of put me in that direction. So something about the right brain side, about the sort of the pattern of the combination of emotion and just the mathematics of music, you could call it, would
That's
sort of
true.
kind of open up that left side of my brain.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is so cool. So let's take me to the beginning. So you are from Northern Virginia.
Yeah.
We share that. I'm from, I guess, Southern Virginia, Virginia Beach.
Yeah,
we have
the
that
VA
in common.
connection. Yeah.
So you grew up in Alexandria.
Yeah.
Tell me about that, about how you grew up and your background, and also too how music got incorporated into that.
Yeah, so shout out to all the Nova folks out there.
Yeah, that's right.
But so the way that got started was so I grew up in Alexandria, went to T.C. Williams High School, so shout out to the Titans more specifically.
Yeah.
But I kind of, again, as I mentioned, I kind of got started in the technical direction, but I took a guitar lab course years and years ago. Was certainly into kind of the musical side of things, and initially, if anything, more into sort of kind of the writing and acting side of things when it came to creative stuff. But It was kind of a great area to grow up in for that, because there's a nice arts community there, and because it's sort of kind of around where NIH is, there's this decent scientific community there. So what I think, you might call this kind of synergy, between left and right brain, which you kind of have to have because of the demands that each one puts on you to be able to combine them effectively. I think it's a good place where you can forge that, because you get a lot of those creative people and very ambitious people there too.
Oh, for sure.
And that's kind of where it kicked off. And then from there, it spread into college and sort of in the medical school with kind of a gradual buildup of the balance between these two, and kind of ultimately brought to me where I am here.
That is so cool. So in that time frame, from high school, college, I mean, what kind of music artists were inspiring you at that time?
So initially, I was a grunge guy. So so I'll say first off, I'm kind of those guys I had a sampler platter, I guess. I couldn't really decide what I liked at first. I mean, initially I was in all kinds of stuff. I was into classic rock, so Led Zeppelin. I had my Led Zeppelin phase.
Did you have the 4 CD set with that's like all their greatest hits? And
I have to admit to my shame, I never actually got into it. I had friends who were into it, and I never quite got that far. Okay. Basically, what happened was I had when I was kind of initially in college, we had to do the course I went into, which was an MD PhD program, medical school combined with a research program. We're often working late in the lab. Or sometimes, we're in a clinic late, just kind of going through, medical information, just sort of kind of studying for exams. And I would, turn on the radio, and I'd often have classic rock on. And so, back in those kind of heady early days, I had, Peter Frampton and, Led Zeppelin. I had some kind of Southern stuff going there too. So I had Leonard Skinner, and I mean, I kind of started with, I feel like I kind of started with classic rock. And then for some reason,
the grunge.
Yeah, the grunge. Yeah, you read my mind.
Grunge was hot, man.
Grunge got me. And here's the thing. I mean, even now, and this is something I love to, I kind of love to sort of emphasize with this left brain, right brain thing, and sort of the power of music. We had to work long, crazy hours. You could only drink so much Red Bull or whatever it was back then, espresso or coffee.
No dose.
No dose. That's right.
That?
Yeah, those days.
All-nighters.
That's right. I had plenty of those.
Oh,
no
yeah.
dose. And the funny thing is, I mean, eventually, you lose the capacity for that to stimulate you, because you get what's called tolerance of the receptors for caffeine. And I mean, I rented that as much as anyone else, but there was one thing that always kept me up if I needed it. I could play Pearl Jam Jeremy.
And that keep you going.
Keep me going.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, better than any shot of caffeine. And so I recognized then there was something powerful about certain types of music, and grunge and alternative. Pearl Jam was good for this. Nirvana, Stone Temple Pilots, Queens of the Stone Age even.
The greats.
Yeah.
Queens has kind of carried that on.
They have,
for
yeah.
Sure.
Respect to them, yeah.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because a lot of the bands have just kind of moved off from that. But yeah, we still got some
Queens
torchbearers.
is carrying it, man.
Yeah. Soundgarden too.
Oh, yeah. Soundgarden.
Badass, yeah.
And you can't forget Alice in Chains, man.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, never. And the proto guys too, Iggy Pop.
Iggy Pop,
a
lot of that came from that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
He was like the originator.
That's exactly, progenitor.
So that really kind of influenced you. So you saw that time frame, I'm sure, while you're going to college, and then of course, med school, that the music kind of carried you through that, because it takes a lot of energy to pull that off.
It does,
right?
Yeah, it does. And I kind of joke with people, if you want to get the best soundtracks in the world, go to an operating room with the kind of the badass surgeons.
Yeah.
They get the best soundtracks, because that's what they do. They have to have that kind of swagger swerve. They got to have that drive, get up and go, and they got to be able to sort of kind of will themselves past obstacles.
So that's really true, because I've seen that in Nip Tuck. It was about 5 years ago. But yeah, I mean, they'd always put on this whole soundtrack, and before they go into surgery, they'd show the CD, and then he'd start running it, and the music would play, and then he'd start cutting away.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, it happens in the real world too.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I find that interesting how they intersect, the music and the medical. One is influencing the other.
Exactly. And again, it's kind of a classic right brain, that's maybe sort of the right brain, left brain influence, but essentially, we're still kind of working out the details of this. And there's a really cool book called This Is Your Brain on Music, if you ever want to check this out.
Nice. Gets
into some of the neurology of music, but it is true. There is, something that philosophers recognized a while ago. If you ever read sort of Nietzsche, Schopenhauer, and even Kant to some extent, they had found that there was something very special and powerful about music. And the best way we can sort of think about it now, I guess, is that, I get to talk about another philosopher named Leibniz would have been interested in this. Music's sort of a code that somehow gets into a part of our brain that controls our emotions, our emotional states, and to some extent our conscious states.
Huh.
And that seems to be part of the nexus.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's deep stuff.
Neat stuff, yeah.
So take me through that. So I'm sure when you decided you were going to go to medical school, a daunting task indeed, and I'm sure, there's always people out there, the haters, even though they don't mean the hate, but, oh man, that's medical school, that's tough, how are you going to do it? How did you face that resistance at that time? What was your reaction to that?
It's a good question. So I guess the easiest answer to that, or the most accurate answer to that, is initially I didn't. So initially when I went to medical school, I pretty much dropped the creative side for a while. Not really expecting to bring it up much at all. Actually, even before I started medical school, sort of the late, pre-med courses kind of get to be a real pressure cooker. Getting to med school, because it is very competitive, and it really just takes a full commitment. And so as much as I love sort of strumming my guitar, going and singing a cappella, it was just kind of one of those sacrifices I felt I had to make. I did have when I got to medical school, I had some lucky forays in the creative side. I went into Jeopardy. I went to Jeopardy my first year of medical school.
Wow.
Interesting story there.
No, that's cool. That's cool. But you powered through it and you did it, and it seemed like you kept the creative going at the same time.
Yeah, so kind of quiet. I guess in a sense you could think it was dormant. I did, again, even though I didn't really play much myself, I started to compose. I really wasn't singing or my guitar skills had been really atrophied, which became a source of annoyance when I did get back into music. But
it's like a muscle.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's muscle memory.
Let it go, it will go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's like LeBron, putting up those layups.
You got to get in your reps.
Just get the feeling. Yeah.
So, but just on the topic of medical school in general, it's just to me, when I think about it, it's such a daunting task.
Yeah.
My high school girlfriend, she was a biology major in college. She was actually going to be a doctor. She's going to go to med school.
Yeah.
I think she was a little intimidated when she went to school and saw what was ahead. So how do you power through that? Because, I'm sure you're extremely smart, but it's still got to be a daunting task. How did you power through?
I think, the way that you power through, you're absolutely right. Medical, maybe as a public service announcement, people starting careers, medicine is a wonderful career even now. You'll hear a lot of slagging on it because of the changes in healthcare, and it is a difficult road. But there's still just a lot of opportunities in it. There's still a lot of cool things about it, a lot of great people you meet. It is very difficult, and to have that kind of resolve, I think the way that you get through it is that you think about the cool things you can do when you finish that course, because it's a long road of delayed gratification.
And the residency?
Exactly, right. It's 4 years of college. Oftentimes more than 4 years, 4 or more years of medical school, because often there are more and more electives. In my case, I did, again, this combined MD PhD, which was cool because it gave me essentially a scholarship to medical school, but had to come up with, a full-fledged research project. And then, there's residency afterward. And as I'm sure we'll get into, as I found out, medicine can be a somewhat dangerous career for your health. I got a lung condition working as a medical doctor. So there is that risk factor.
Wow. So challenge upon challenge.
Exactly.
More
it never
resistance.
really stops.
So tell me about it. So that's very interesting to me. So you you go through the steps of college, the med school. You get to the residency, which, it's like the final countdown, right? It's still daunting, but you're that much closer to reaching that goal.
Yeah.
And then you got sick, or what happened?
Yeah, the Bordetella pertussis story. Yeah. So kind of to link that what you were saying earlier, right? What you have this delayed gratification, and looking forward to this day and to this sort of period in your career, because going through all this in medical school, you have the power to really, to literally save and change people's lives. And that's really why you do it, either as a clinical physician, as a medical researcher. And so I finally got to that point when I was out, in residency. And you are a practicing doctor at that point. You write prescriptions, you have your license. You are a treating physician responsible for patients.
Right.
And one of the Unfortunately, one of the risks of being a doctor is that you don't have a Marvel force field against the.
You have an invisible shield.
Exactly, yeah, against the nasty germs and just the general risks that occur in a medical environment. And there are a lot of infectious diseases out there, and I was one of the doctors who caught one of them. There was a number of years ago, but there was an epidemic of the whooping cough bacterium called Bordetella pertussis, and I was in what's called a hot zone when we weren't really sure what it was initially at first. Okay. And unfortunately, by the time that it was determined that it was this bacterium and a new strain that the vaccination at that point, or the immunization, hadn't really protected against, it was too late. Just the microbiology of Bordetella, and particularly of this strain, makes it that you have to catch it very early before you really know what it was. And so it was kind of 3 months of utter hell.
Oh, man.
I mean, hell would have been a vacation. It was kind of
that bad.
Horror movie stuff. Yeah, it was bad. And I couldn't really. The worst part about it was that I had a mask on. I mean, that entire 3 month period. I mean, it was just the most surreal moment I think in my entire medical career was I went down one morning, and this was actually after I'd recovered from the pertussis itself, but I had complications in the lungs from all the damage and something called reactive airway disease, and I went down to treat a patient in the ER, and I'd been getting sort of hypoxic, which it means essentially that your tissue oxygen is fairly low. Hypoxemia, which means the blood oxygen is fairly low. I admitted a patient down in the emergency room, even though I was in terrible shape. I had the mask on, and crazy enough, like 2 hours later, I kept getting worse because the oxygen was, I was desaturating oxygen. I wound up in the emergency room on a gurney right next to where
next to your patient. Oh man!
Yeah, right where my patient had been. Yeah.
Oh.
And so my own colleagues, come down there because they got to admit other patients, and they heard that down there. So at the same time, they're trying to admit other patients. Here I am.
Wow, there you
struggling to breathe. Yeah. And so it eventually became clear that my lungs were in very dangerous shape. They were pretty much shredded from the initial infection and then the super infections that occurred on top of that. So yeah.
Man.
So
that is groundbreaking, because I feel like you're taking me with you right there. I feel like I'm there. And so what is in your mindset at that point in time? Is like residency. I'm right there. I am a doctor.
Yeah.
And then you get this whooping cough, a major setback. What's your mindset at that point? What's your internal negative mindset telling you, and what are you doing to overcome that? Because I'm sure there's a lot of inner dialogue happening.
Yeah.
Some good, some bad.
Oh yeah, you read my mind. I mean, I had about 5 or 6 different voices kind of shouting at me to go one way or another. And interestingly, early on, I mean, even though I was not just upset, but I was pretty irate about the sequence of events that had happened.
Oh yeah.
And not really sort of kind of knowing where things were going. But I initially, at least, I wasn't. I would say I was initially pessimistic. I wasn't really depressed, because as bad as it was, it just as an aside, it turns out, I mean, this isn't that uncommon. About 20%, or these days, if anything, even more, with all the resistant bacteria out there, of doctors do develop often a serious condition, and sometimes you have to sort of take a medical leave, and you can do other things, research or whatever you got to do, and you come back into it. So initially, I was kind of bummed.
Yeah.
Because, I was kind of going to tear straight through. I wanted to go into, what's something called academic medicine, be a medical school professor, and just sort of kind of run a research lab, cancer research, which was what I was going to do, gene therapy research. So I was still sort of optimistic. And then several months went by. I got a little better, but not nearly as much as I was hoping to. I kept my exposures limited, but it turned, as sort of the months and then a couple years went by, it became clear that my lungs just weren't clearing infections well. And that's pretty much a death sentence for a medical career. I mean, it's essentially like, a basketball player getting their knee shredded.
And that's it.
Yeah. And that was pretty terrifying when it became clear that was going on, because it just to sort of kind of get through all the technical descriptions of it. Essentially, the lungs have kind of their own compartmentalized immune system that connects in with the body's broader immune system. And in the process of this continuous inflammation infection I was getting, my immune system kind of got confused in a sense. And so it's kind of the worst of both worlds. It was a little bit too active in some cases, and I had an asthma-like condition. but it wasn't really effective in fighting off infections when it actually needed to.
Okay.
And you can't really be in a hospital if you have that, because if you catch an infection from one patient, you can pass it on to another. And that's called a nosocomial infection. That's kind of a no-no. And so until in a sense, my immune system relearned the way it does for asthmatics, I was kind of stuck. So that's 2 years on, I got a little nervous, and then 2010, I had, I guess, what you call this is kind of basically, it was basically about 3.5 years after I got the initial infection. That's what I call my annus horribilis. I lost my voice. I couldn't talk.
Completely.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much.
For how long of a time?
It was almost 2 months. It wasn't a complete loss of the voice, but basically, I was, every time I tried to speak, I'd start wheezing, I'd start coughing. It's kind of, this is to talk about kind of crazy inspirations for music, which I'll get into later. It was kind of almost a kind of a horror type of period, because the physical debility was bad enough, but not really being able to communicate it, to the point where I would break down, I couldn't even speak, was one-sided nightmarish, and it was
completely.
Yeah.
At that point, do you know your voice is going to come back, or you don't know?
At that point, I was cautiously optimistic, but considering that it had actually gotten worse rather than better during that period, I honestly wasn't sure, because it was in one of those gray areas where even I was in touch with some of the top sort of specialists in this area, allergists, immunologists, and ENT specialists, and even they were sort of kind of flummoxed about the best way forward. And there were only so many reassurances they could give. I mean, even working in the business myself as a doctor, even though we get prescriptions and we try to reassure patients, half the time it's an educated guess. We don't really know.
No one knows exactly 100%.
Exactly, because the human body is the most complicated instrument in the known universe. I mean, the physiology is incredibly complicated, and especially for something like this, where the immune system is a whole system, we weren't really sure. And so that was the time when I think I've been the most scared I've ever been, because I didn't know if I was going to wind up in the hospital. I did have health insurance for respiratory issues, but because of the way health insurance works in the country, it was tricky for everything else in my body. So if I had something else break down, like my GI tract from all the the meds I had to take,
right,
that was a danger. And I think that maybe the scariest part was as I found out later, what had happened was I caught a pneumonia, and
on top of all that,
right. Right, and the pneumonia was what sort of kind of set the downward spiral, and I realized that if I got a bad enough lung infection, there was a potential that I could have a prolonged hospital stay or worse. So that's kind of when, again, this was an early, you never what sort of kind of fertile ground and inspiration is going to come for your music, or in my case, my writing first, but that kind of, just really kind of being at the end of your rope, and having to really think about things in brass tacks. Where am I going to go now? What am I going to do? A lot of my inspiration for what I did later came from that dark. It was a very dark period in 2010.
I can imagine. What was your source of inspiration to pull you through that time? That's some heavy material.
Yeah, so I mean, I had at the time my girlfriend Gloria was wonderful. It was kind of rough for both of us, as you can imagine, because I had a very cool career plan laid out. I mean, I had everything laid out.
It was all planned.
Perfectly. It was all planned out. And
you had it all set. This happens.
Exactly. Yeah, and it was a brutal time. I mean, just as you can imagine, this for guys. I mean, I felt like I even though I was kind of stuck in a situation where I really didn't have any control over it, I just felt terrible that I wanted to marry her and start a family, and I felt like I just wasn't in a position to do that. And she did her best. It was tough for her too. She did her best to kind of help me through that. And I mean, at the time I was still stuck on the West Coast. My family's East Coast. I couldn't move because my medical care for everything lung related was on the West Coast. You can't really transfer health insurance, and I had a lot of friends at that time who, I mean, I'd done what I could to help them, but even, it wasn't a quid pro quo thing. They just did what they could to help someone who definitely needed a helping hand. I had people helping me with groceries, and also I think I just sort of, this is, again, it kind of gets back to the Swagger Swerve concept. I mean, I said there were two things I could do. I could, just kind of wallow in despair and just feel sorry for myself.
Right.
Or I could sort of kind of make lemonade out of lemons. It wasn't much of a silver lining, I guess, to pick a metaphor, but I could make lemonade out of lemons, do something productive. And so it was kind of around that time where I sort of got serious initially about doing something creative, because I couldn't really do medical related work. Obviously, I was kind of hustling to do whatever work I could teaching, and I couldn't really even teach during that period when my voice was out.
Hardly speak.
Couldn't speak, right?
So you can't teach.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot I could do. The one thing I could do was write. And so interestingly, that's where sort of my first creative gig before I went into songwriting was writing a novel, what became my first published novel. And it, interestingly,
that's so
enough,
cool.
Yeah, that's where it came out.
I really like that. So, I mean, talk about challenge upon challenge upon challenge. And to those out there in the audience out there, I mean, this is life. This is real stuff.
Yeah.
You have your plans, you have your goals, you have your dreams, and these challenges come in unannounced. You can't stop it.
Yeah.
And you have quite a few, leveled upon leveled. And so you say to yourself, okay, I'm either going to focus on all this negativity all around me, or I'm going to focus on something else that's going to pull me forward that I can do productive.
Yeah.
And it's really cool how it's like, okay, well, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't teach. Well, let me dig into this creative, write a novel. And I'm guessing when you wrote the novel, it pushed you through.
It did, right. I mean, it was very key for me. I did get a lot of questions from friends and family, and now that I've got the fan base, to the extent my fans look this stuff up, they'll query me about it too. I mean, they ask me, did you get depressed? Did you get really down at the time? And interestingly, I don't remember ever really feeling depressed. And it was in part because I was just so busy struggling to survive. But I think what I sort of learned to do was to channel all those negative emotions. Not just sort of the daily battles, but just the uncertainty of it all, which is maybe the worst part. Not knowing what sort of tunnel is going to emerge from. I just sort of learned to channel that creatively, and I think that's a good lesson for anyone who does something creative, which is that any creative career is good for that purpose. It's very good for taking negative emotions, positive emotions, all kinds of emotions, and turning them into something concrete that can be very sort of instructive for the world at large. And I don't remember sort of consciously thinking that at first, but I realized when I was writing my novel.
You realize it now.
Yeah, and I very much do realize it now, that a lot of the darkest times when, again, I was physically debilitated, when I couldn't even communicate how awful it was, and let alone the career and sort of kind of family concerns I had, when I sort of kind of learned to channel those in a certain way, it turned out to be a kind of a fuel for me.
I'm inspired by that. I'm really inspired. So take me through the process. So you start the novel. How do you do it? How do you figure out what you're going to write about, and what's your process in putting that together?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm going to sort of geek out here at the risk of that.
Geek it up, man.
So interestingly, the origin of this, so that even though I got into it seriously in 2010, I kind of started just to kind of put some stuff together in 2007, and the origin of the novel itself was it's kind of just the way music does. It kind of goes through several iterations. It actually began from a technical research area I was interested in, and so at the time that all this kind of got started, my medical research when I was in medical school and graduate school, and it was this combined Harvard-MIT program called HST. I was working in gene therapy. And so from that background, I got very interested in therapeutic development. But as I went through medical school, I realized it'd be kind of cool to simulate tissues. Because a lot of what I was finding out was that when patients, especially as I found out, from personal experience, when patients sort of kind of suffer what's called a decompensation in their condition, there's kind of a breakdown in physiology, which is another way of saying this is there's kind of a breakdown in sort of the sort of the logical flow of what the tissues are doing. Because all of our tissues, in particular things like the liver and kidney, are sort of information processors. That's actually what they do. It's very interesting. They're sort of like data interfaces.
It's interesting.
So from that sort of germ of an idea, I got interested in sort of kind of making very kind of high fidelity, what's called in silico simulations. And there's been interest in this for a while, but I was reading a lot of books at that time, very sort of kind of technical books, on everything from what's called physical information theory, to sort of branches of physical sciences where what are natural processes are approximate in terms of information theory.
Okay.
So it's kind of this nerdy, geeky idea, and I began to sort of kind of almost as a creative sandbox, thinking up like short stories or just sort of kind of wild creative uninhibited, I guess, as you could
So
say.
you started off with that premise, but then from there,
premise.
your creativity goes wild.
Yeah, exactly.
There's all kinds of stories and directions you could go from that.
Exactly, right.
Okay.
So it started out a little bit, right, started a little bit technical, but then I realized, man, this is kind of cool. And from this background, in all the books I was reading, including there's an astrophysicist named Lee Smolin, Smolin, who writes a lot about this stuff. It's very cool. Lee Smolin, Gregory Kuyten. They mention the name of Leibniz, who was a very important 17th century philosopher, German philosopher who invented calculus. But he started computer science. He began the idea of this philosophy of logic, of sort of symbols, sort of perfectly capturing the natural world.
Okay.
And when I started reading about this, I realized what was really cool about Leibniz was that even though we use a lot of this stuff technically, engineering and calculus, and obviously again sort of computer software in a sense comes from Leibniz. Leibniz's own interest was almost spiritual. He wanted to sort of kind of have a perfect sort of logical representation, a language, which he called characteristica universalis, that would perfectly describe sort of the physical world and even sort of up to the point of human experience and emotions. And so starting from this idea, I began kind of putting this thing together initially as a sci-fi novel to sort of investigate a story that would sort of link up one man's experience, kind of a haunting experience, kind of linked to my own experience, and link up his own experience where he undergoes self-discovery during a period of travail for him, during a period of travail for the country, and link it to something kind of almost cosmic. And that was the genesis of what became my first novel, Echoes of Mystic Chords, on Amazon right now.
That is so cool.
But that's where it came from. Yeah.
So that's where it started. So how long did it take you to finish the process?
So it's a good question. I mean, initially, kind of because I was getting to, even though I started in 2007, I wasn't really serious about it. It was more just sort of kind of bouncing story ideas off of friends. And I was initially kind of doing it as a short story. But again, bringing us back to 2010, during my Annus Horribilis, the one thing I could do again during that rough period was to write. And so I actually took that sort of initial story a lot more seriously. And so that's when I developed what would become not just a novel, but a trilogy in the genre of what's called visionary metaphysical fiction, exploring the philosophy of Leibniz, of this kind of in a sense, the language of emotion, of spirit, and as I'll get to, the sort of the language of music in a sense.
Very cool.
And from 2010 really until about, I would say maybe about 2012, kind of about 2.5 years during that period was when I actually was serious about the writing. And fortunately, my lungs to some extent, and my voice, most importantly, did recover. I was able to go back to teaching and research, kind of doing some fellowship work. Essentially, sort of at nights. I didn't want to stay up too late because I needed my sleep to recover.
Yeah.
But I would go to sort of kind of coffee shops in Koreatown, and I would just sort of kind of write that novel. And that's where it came from. Yeah, it was 2 years.
Do you feel looking back that digging into that creative helped heal you?
I think it did in an important way because it's we talk a lot about the placebo effect, and I mean this is something that both my own patients when I was actively practicing and just people in general ask me about. Is the placebo effect real? It is in the sense that there's a connection, in many ways poorly understood, between the kind of determination you can muster in your conscious mind and the unconscious processes, both sort of mentally and the connection of both those conscious and unconscious neurological processes to the rest of the body, the immune system, and your general physiological functioning. What's called your homeostasis, which is just the housekeeping that your cells maintain, and the way it manifests is there's some very interesting things I'll get into on this. It's kind of which led to my music. When you get into, in my case, writing a novel, something creative that focuses you first of all, you do things somewhat consciously, somewhat unconsciously, that help you get better. You focus on your diet a little more. You maintain your equanimity. You don't get sort of rattled by things enough because you have something to focus your mind.
Something to balance.
Exactly, right. And so your actions help, but even just oddly enough, I mean the willpower that you maintain, the ability not to get sort of kind of overwhelmed and just again wallow in despair. I mean, it turns out even when it comes to the hormone circulating throughout your body, there's something called cortisol, which is sort of kind of a long-term stress hormone that gets reduced, and that actually tends to be healthier for your immune system. Cortisol is immunosuppressive.
So your immune system's getting better.
Exactly.
The
healing improves.
Yes.
And also, this is a funny story here. One of the things that eventually got me to do, even though I was getting better, I kind of plateaued, which was frustrating, is that I pushed, and talking about swagger and swerving, I pushed myself at the point, to the point where I really just wanted to, to get beyond this damn plateau where, all the medications I was on, the treatments I was on to bring my lung condition back to normal. I wanted to sort of kind of get past that plateau, and I began sort of a fasting protocol.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, so it's kind of hardcore, but I got to the point where this was really in 2015 where I got serious about it. Just reading some papers in the medical literature, and oddly enough, talking to a personal trainer in the gym who tried this, because unfortunately there aren't a whole lot of papers. There's not a lot of empirical study, but certain types of fasting are believed to reset the immune system in a way. Because
I've heard that.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and not just in sort of kind of a vague holistic sense, but in a very sort of concrete sense. When you go into a fasting state, a lot of very important metabolic changes happen, and the body, in a sense, kind of prioritizes. And so a lot of what causes this reactive airway disease is your own immune system just being stupid. And so
by fasting, you're almost doing a reset.
Yeah, exactly. And the fasting says to the body, stop sending these damn T cells in to attack my lungs. Yeah. We got more important things to worry about. We got to get food.
Yeah.
So you fool the body. And so I got into, what turned out to be some kind of hardcore fasting, sometimes 36 to 48 hours or even more.
Okay.
And it was tough initially, but I found
you saw the benefits.
Yeah, I began seeing benefits from it. And, I hesitate to sort of recommend this because, again, as a medical doctor, we don't have empirical evidence, and there may have been other factors too, so it's kind of hard to tease out the causation correlation. But
right.
in my case, whatever it was, the fasting and or some combination of things I was doing at the time really did bring my health to the next level. And that's when I was able to start singing.
Wow. Yeah. Man, what I'm blown away. What a journey.
Oh yeah.
and obstacles and overcoming obstacles, and you keep pushing. So yeah, we'll get to the singing, but before that, with the novel, so 2010 to 2012 is when you really picked it up, although 2007 is when you started.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I like too, is that you finished what you started, even though it took a while.
Yeah.
You kept it going.
Very important.
Last week I was on with Blair Daly, hit songwriter, and we were talking about the process, how he had initial hits in the beginning of his career, and then he had kind of a 10-year dull period where he didn't have much action. So I love the long haul strategy too, because a lot of times people think, oh, Dr. Wes, he's successful. I'm sure just everything just went his way and everything was perfect. No, you had several challenges.
Yeah.
So you started the novel 2007, and then, of course, not by design, but because of what was going on in 2010, that's when you picked it back up.
Yeah.
Got it done in 2012. And so I'm sure there was resistance in getting that done and getting it published. Tell me about that and how you overcame that.
Yeah. So that's as almost any sort of first-time author particular can tell you, the most unnerving, unsettling, and rather vexing part of the writing process is actually getting it into print. And so once it was wrapped up in 2012, it was a pretty long incubation. It was, first of all, part of that was sort of kind of on my end, because I did start to kind of get busy and really sort of kind of get focused into getting back into a medical fellowship. And so I actually did sort of, I wouldn't say I put it aside, but I did back burner on the novel once it was written. And I initially was kind of like, okay, well, I had this sort of kind of brainchild here. What do I do with it? How do I actually release it from the nest? I began to. This is one of the keys to my music and everything else later. Was I began to assemble a team including several editors, a typesetter, kind of an old friend from Virginia, illustrator, my good friend Will Chen, who also illustrated a lot of the cover art for our music later on.
Oh, nice.
And that was actually very key. I mean, when you have a team around you, I'm sure Blair Daly. He might have said the same thing.
He's got a team.
Yeah, and Josh and some of the guys you interviewed before.
All about a team.
It is, right.
It really is.
And the team is critical because, once you sort of spread it out from just yourself, once it becomes something that there's a group investment in and a team that believes in you, they sort of kind of, it's not, I wouldn't say they pressure you, but they encourage you. And they say, man, this is really cool. Don't set this aside, because I think the sheer exhaustion of going through, and whether it's a novel or in my case now the EP, it's something that's weighed you down enough that you're like,
how
okay,
can I do this?
Yeah.
It's a daunting task.
It's daunting, right? You're like, okay, time to take a break. And especially then when I was actually kind of doing some cool stuff on the research side. I'd gotten into what my research focus, my medical focus in general right now, which is bioinformatics. Kind of like what I was doing back in 2007 when I was sort of simulating tissues and ultimately getting into sort of assembling information in ways that would lead to better pharmacological modalities for disease. So my mind was sort of kind of being drawn back to the left brain side, but I had my team around me, and gradually I realized, hey, I mean, this is, just kind of oddly enough, taking fresh eyes to it several months later, this is kind of cool.
Right.
And I did, as you correctly surmised, I did run into some challenges initially publishing it because, of course, I was an unknown author. So I did have sort of the Jeopardy sort of experience in the background, which is kind of cool.
Okay.
I was on 5 shows, and so I had a fan base.
So you had a base,
right? But I wasn't really known as
still a first-time author.
First-time author.
So that's
right.
an obstacle.
Exactly right. When I was in medical school, I was the editor of this essay anthology, but nothing fictional, I guess. And so, so I had to sort of kind of make a case that, that this was something new and different. And I mean, this is something, again, again, your podcast, I'm sure is really good for this because you talk to the musicians, when we're starting out, not when we're sort of established.
Yeah.
It is 2 different worlds between when you're starting out and when you're a known quantity.
Oh, yes.
And so, not only is it sort of a crazy hustle, but you have to essentially, you have to essentially just be a believer and a champion of your own work. And you have to sort of kind of connect to it. It only takes one other person who says, "Wow, this is something kind of cool and interesting."
I completely agree.
And that's how it works. And it's kind of this is again good advice to anyone sort of at this point. It's not everyone thinks, oh, you got to have some special inspiration, and there's this one moment like in the Eminem songs when you got to seize it, and you do have to be on the lookout for opportunities. But the thing is, it's kind of a numbers game in a lot of ways because you don't know what's in. All of us have our external. Our physiognomies where we communicate sort of just a tiny portion of ourselves, like 5 or 10% of what's inside us and our consciousness and what makes us tick. And most of us, for various reasons, in part because we don't have the time to communicate it, we don't sort of communicate our full character and what really drives us. And so you don't necessarily know what someone on the other side is going to be really interested in. So you just kind of put it out there. You make, start from the business cards and handshakes. You do little summaries. You go to book clubs. You just got to talk about it, and eventually what happens, someone talks to someone and says, wow, this is such a cool, weird concept, but it might actually work. And you also, and again, it's one thing that social media and the internet obviously have done is that they have helped, in a sense, to create these common groups of interest or assemblages of interest where people who might otherwise not really have a way to define themselves from the mass market are able to sort of collect together in a group that's interested in what you're putting out. And so that's kind of where sort of the initial interest in my novel got started.
That's so cool. That is so cool. And I believe in just what you said. It just takes one person to believe, and you'd be surprised. And it's just that little bit of encouragement that can pull you through even the biggest of challenges. And also, too, putting together a team. I can't stress it enough, even for my own self as a music artist. A point in time in my career where I was like, you know what, I've got to do it all myself, play all the instruments and, drums, bass, guitar. Well, I got to mix it too. And, the artwork, I better do it. It's got to, there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, too, I feel that the collaborative process is so great.
Yeah.
And if you can find the right team to put it together, it's like you all inspire each other and you bring it to new heights.
Exactly,
which
right.
you might not have done otherwise.
Yeah, that sort of external validation and just the collective brainstorming, sort of the collective mind that you all put together, to use sort of a Kantian concept for anyone into philosophy, that sort of collective mind that gets forged, the hive mind, is I think that's where a lot of really good creative work comes from. Because once it's kind of a little bit hard to explain, but I think one of the biggest barriers to actually getting something done in general, especially anything creative, is that you get it stuck in your own mind, and almost maybe the fear of the criticism and the fear of, oh man, what this is going to sound stupid when I actually put it out.
Yeah.
It kind of holds you back, and it's not that what you have is perfect. It's more that the development that it takes to get to something really interesting. It requires that kind of externalization, because once it comes out of your mind into something concrete, it's actually a little bit different from the somewhat amorphous subconscious mass of ideas you have in your head.
Right.
And it's once you put it down on paper, it can be as simple as like I had a cell phone or I had a voice recorder with me. I sometimes jotted down the notes. I'd strum a few chords on guitar for one of my key songs. When I was like on a road trip up to NorCal, and that sort of little genesis, that gem, that seed, I guess, that germ or seed, that's where stuff starts. And once you get it out there, people start saying, "Hey, you should probably add a little hook in there. That'd be kind of cool, or make it a little more bluesy."
It starts to develop.
I'll just give you exactly, and I'll give you an example. Sort of the headline song, the first song on our EP, "A Hustler's Tale," kind of had that. Had that incubation and that I think the right term for that, gestation, I guess is the right word.
Okay.
It began as it was a song that I had this is kind of how songwriting develops, because songwriting is tough, I'll admit. I mean, I love to do it, but
it's a process.
It's tough. Yeah, you have to be in a certain zone for it. But it started as just this vague collection of melodies, and I feel like the ultimate origin of songwriting is sort of a reversal of that process that, again, Nietzsche and Schopenhauer, philosophers, refer to, where just as music sort of kind of keys into an emotional set of emotional states you're in, a set of emotional states that you create kind of creates a set of metaphors and a story, and that's where melodies spring out of. And some people get words first. I tend to get melodies out of that sort of emotional state. So I'll imagine like a narrative coming out of a kind of series of emotional states. And then melodies spring out, and I got stuck on this for like 6 months. I had this cool set of melodies.
I've had that happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sure a lot. I mean, I've seen a lot of your guests here, Evan.
Yeah, you get stuck on a chorus, you get stuck on a verse, you get stuck on a rhythm. I can't get the lyrics. I mean, it happens.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how it happened for me. And I wasn't taking my own advice. I wasn't sort of kind of jotting it down. I was like, man, what do I do with this? And so eventually, what I did, and eventually I started to get a little bit more of a concrete melody, and I started to kind of force myself, okay, structure it, think about, the verses and the bridge and, the actual kind of musical things, the tempo and the rhythm and the key that you want to be in. And I began to sort of do it, that you sort of kind of move from that amorphous state to something a little more systematic. And the first thing that came out just was kind of a dud. I was thinking, man, is this real? And I was kind of like, man, I don't even want to record this because I'm going to laugh at myself. But I bit the bullet. Had a voice recorder.
And you did it anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
You got past the resistance.
I got past the resistance. And that was key. And even though the first sort of beat, the first melody and the rhythm of that melody, wasn't really a good song, it was the kernel of what developed later. And the key, as I found out, and again, this is how this stuff happens, is I was like, damn, I just want to develop this. I know this is a good song. Yeah. Just waiting to burst out from here. Wow, how do I get there? It was Stevie Nicks. I was listening to a Stevie Nicks track.
Okay.
Initially from a video game commercial of all things. My friends are sort of kind of into Japanese anime, and I was kind of over there, and they
were playing a Stevie Nicks track.
Stevie Nicks track, right?
Really? Which one?
It was a Black Magic Woman.
Okay.
Yeah, it's over now. Now do you know how? Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
The pieces and go home. Right, exactly. And somehow that it's kind of I'm sort of paraphrasing the lyrics right now, but it was somewhere in that track. It just sort of kind of hooked in with the kernel that I had before.
Had it happen too.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So you're in that moment, and you're kind of, I wouldn't say you're stuck, but you're in transition on a song.
Yeah.
But then you hear another song, and usually for me, it's like a song that's it's been hot for a long time.
Yeah.
And there's something in there that stands the test of time.
Exactly.
Whether it be lyrics or music or whatever.
Precisely.
But there was something in that creative process of the Stevie Nicks song that was the aha moment.
Yeah.
That it clicked back for you.
It was the edge, right? And that's what I kind of was kicking myself after that. Of all the bands to get inspiration from, why was I not listening to some Fleetwood Mac? Because that's the thing. Fleetwood Mac for me has always had an edge, and it's the bluesy part in particular. And that's what I realized was the missing link. Was that I had the genesis, and I had the I did have a certain sort of I had a way to sort of fit the lyrics, I guess, into the verses. But the way that one note would transition to another, that's the part I just couldn't seem to lock into, and I couldn't seem to find quite the right key for it. But when I listened to Stevie Nicks, it all sort of kind of fell into place.
It made sense.
Right, because it had to be bluesy, and that's where Hustler's Tale was born. And sort of the bluesiness is the part that the fans love, but it's also what kind of gives the edge to the song.
Isn't it great when you're in a creative process working on something and you have that moment of clarity?
Yeah.
Isn't it just the greatest thing?
Yeah, it's a wonderful feeling.
Bliss.
Yeah. I mean, it's an epiphany, right?
Yeah.
Because you think it's just something you read about.
No.
But it happens for real.
Something happens, it comes over you and says, now I'm clear.
Exactly.
I know exactly what I'm going to do. And then you swerve.
Right. And you swerve to it, exactly. That's how it happens.
So, Hustler's Tale. Tell me about, what's it about? Tell me all about that.
So like I said, the genesis of Hustler's Tale was actually the second song that I began to write on, but it was actually, if anything, sort of from the experiences I had before, it was probably the first one that was unconsciously brewing in my mind. So as the title of the song suggests, it's about what what a hustler does, and about the real world that all of us have to deal with at some point, where where we have to sort of step outside our comfort zones, where we don't have sort of the smooth, stately procession of our plans all falling into place, and we have to improvise and hustle. And so that it came from my own experience,
from your life,
from what I've been through. Because essentially during that kind of a dark period when I didn't really know how my respiratory health was going to develop, but I was still sort of kind of cautiously optimistic about the direction it's going to go into. I had to hustle. I mean, if you think about it, part of hustling, I think makes people rather uncomfortable about it, is that you kind of have to make compromises. You have to do things that are fairly uncomfortable. And part of what I had to do when, again, my lungs couldn't clear infection, I couldn't work in a clinic. At the time, there weren't really a whole lot of fellowships, and for a period, I couldn't even be near a hospital because of how bad the condition was. So I could teach.
Right.
Problem is, my lungs weren't in a very good shape to teach either for a period. And so what happened was, I had a good enough accessible background that I could get some pretty good paying gigs during that period. But if I was going to cough and wheeze during it, they didn't want me to be in front of students because it didn't really look good. And so what I had to do essentially was I had to kind of hustle. I mean, what I did is I'll admit it right here, I sort of dissembled my condition for a period, and I had a whole pharmacy full of asthma meds with me, and I was able to keep it under control.
So you could power through.
So I could power through it, right?
That's the hustle.
That's part of the hustle, and it was uncomfortable because I mean I put a big premium on making sure that my everyone knows my condition, and any other situation I wouldn't have made any sort of bones about it. But this was really sheer survival.
Right.
Couldn't do anything else. And so part of hustling is you sort of realize that the real world sometimes kind of forces you into difficult situations. And I was able to power through that. I got a lot of good teaching gigs. I was able to consult. I did some language translation. I picked up Mandarin, Chinese, and some other languages, and Portuguese.
So you make it happen.
You made it happen.
So there's textbook, and then there's the real world.
There's real world, yeah.
Where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
And you found that hustle.
Exactly. So I found the hustle, and it was. I wouldn't say it was a new thing for me. I mean, even when I was back in high school, I would sort of kind of find ways to get things done. And part of hustling, most of hustling, I feel like, is just getting out there, being on top of things, and making sure that that you're able to herd all the cats in a group to get to where we need to go. But it certainly kind of went to a new level when I was trying to overcome all that and just had to sort of kind of find a way to survive. And from that experience, it was just so kind of different, and I think it just added such a new dimension to reality. I mean, it was, and this also kind of came in my novel. I had a tremendous respect for, I met a lot of very interesting people in that period. I had a lot of respect for just people who have to get through tough times, do dirty, that show dirty jobs with Mike Rowe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those are the people I said, forget about all this, forget about all these, the politicians, out here, trying to claim that they're doing things that are heroic. I mean, the real heroes are the people who are just kind of quietly doing their jobs.
I agree.
Don't get a lot of attention, and sometimes they're maybe scorned at by polite society. But they're the toughest people, most respectable people I met, because they, as difficult as it was, they would power through. And so that sort of combination of my own experience, vicarious experience, lent me the idea of a hustler, of someone who's down on his luck, losing his way, to paraphrase, one of the first verses of the song. Yeah. Doing what he's got to do. And
it's almost like a movie.
It is exactly. That's what it became.
Okay.
So kind of fast forward to 2014. I was kind of recovered at that point. The novel at that point was going to the press, but I was kind of thinking about initially just sort of kind of making little video trailers to help sell the book. And I had the music experience, which was dormant while I was in medical school, but it kind of came back. I figured, hey, it's better than just kind of sort of outsourcing as a composer. I could try myself.
Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Just kind of why not? And so I just began composing, kind of different flavors of music, and oddly enough, it actually began to flow early on. Again, initially I wasn't really kind of formed tunes yet. But in 2014, in Cal State Northridge, is kind of where all this began. I was just kind of doing a cappellas with some early song versions, including the precursor of Hustler's Tale. And some students there, after I'd been teaching a class, they were a pre-med class, they just kind of heard me just kind of rehearsing a cappellas, and at one point strumming a guitar. And they said, "That's kind of neat, man. You should put that together in an album."
Right.
And that was my first genesis, my first sort of kind of sense that, that what became A Hustler's Tale and some of the other songs on our EP.
That was the aha moment.
That was the aha moment, exactly.
You pivoted, you swerved.
That was a light bulb, right. And I swerved from there, right. And so I started to swagger and swerve to put the music together. I'll just as inside that I'm proud to say that Cal State Northridge was also where Serge Tankian from System of a Down, the bands got started. So I kind of had that inspiration at that same hallowed ground, and from there on, I began to develop the songs. And Hustler's Tale became a focus as again I began to sort of think about how am I going to turn this into something that I can bring out there. It was a slow incubation, actually, over a couple of years, and then again I had that experience with that Stevie Nicks track. And Hustler's Tale became essentially this, as you said, a story, like a film, a movie about a hustler in the Great Depression, I should say the start of the Great Depression, the end of the Roaring '20s. Kind of that fun period which you associate with Great Gatsby in many ways, the flappers,
20s.
Roaring '20s, the flappers, Al Capone, Scarface, Prohibition. It was a time of, obviously, it was kind of certainly a gang-ridden kind of violent time in history, but it was also a lot of our sort of best music, sort of the best sort of seminal music that sort of served as a precursor for what we have today.
Absolutely.
Came about from the speakeasies. And so that world and this concept sort of entered my mind, and I said, wow, okay, well, I'll make a song, and in what became, in a sense, this little movie about an Irish hustler down on his luck, loses all his money, and even worse, he owes his money to a gang boss in a city, sort of a fictional San Francisco. Uh-oh, he's in trouble. So what's he going to do now? So he loses everything in a bet on a horse track. So he kind of walks away with a death wish, but he finds a diamond, and it turns out this diamond is being sought by two rival gangs.
Okay.
So this is his aha moment, and there's no turn back.
His aha moment, okay.
Yeah.
And then what?
And so Hank O'Neill, the name of this, or Hustler Hank, as this guy is known, he picks up this diamond, and he realizes, he doesn't really have another choice, or else he's going to get hunted down by the gang for get his kneecaps broken for all the debt.
Yeah.
He's got to now pose as a gang member, and there's no turning back now. So he dresses up as his gang member, disguises, and from there, the song basically tells a narrative about Hank's hustling and what, essentially what he has to do to swagger and swerve to survive in this very dangerous world of gangland. And it takes him into the headquarters of one of the rival gangs, where he meets a gangster's mole who's kind of down on her own luck.
Yeah.
She's been her name is Lucy McBride. We're trying to make her an iconic character, so the siren from Sioux Country, as she's called.
Nice.
And she's been caught by the lead gangster, trying to steal from him to escape his clutches. And so now you've got a Bonnie and Clyde situation, two of them together. They run off through the streets of the city, trying to survive and hide and disguise and dissemble and dissimulate and do all the things you got to do when you hustle.
Right.
And eventually the gangs do catch up to them. But in that crucial moment, don't want to spoil it, I guess, in that crucial moment, both Hank and Lucy figure out ways to swagger and swerve to make it through this, and to get to a distant town where Lucy, who's sort of famous as a beauty of her day, performing the speakeasies, at a hotel where she had sung before, and ultimately sort of kind of set their paths to get there.
That's cool.
So
that sounds like a feature film.
it kind of is.
If I'm hearing you right.
A little bit. I had a little Quentin Tarantino inspiration for it, I guess. So
I can see that.
Kind of a little bit of infusion there.
So it's kind of a music video / short film, and are you kind of pushing both angles on that?
I am, yeah, exactly. So essentially, the wonderful thing about the music video format is that it gives you a way to that sort of multimedia element gives you a way to create a much broader world for the musical story you're telling. So when you create the song, both the lyrics and the music tell the story. Right. In this case, because it has sort of a bluesy vibe, the music, particularly the bridge when you hear it, together with the lyrics, kind of tells this fascinating kind of picaresque guys and dolls, kind of funny, even sort of sexy story in various places when Hank and Lucy kind of get together. But you know, because it tells such a sort of visually evocative story, without the visuals, something's missing. Yeah. And so for the brand of music that my band Konundrum creates in general, the music video is a key medium because the sort of the genre we've created, something called hypno-intox for
Hypno-intox.
Hypno-intox.
Oh,
yeah.
Break that down for me.
Hypnotize the mind, intoxicate the soul.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's a mix of alternative, experimental art rock, new metal, and blues, but it has a focus on lyrically and narratively rich stories. And so, again, in part because I began as a novelist, the songs that Konundrum puts out are sort of philosophically rich, thought-provoking, and the thing is they tell a story that's on the one hand very has some depth to it, but it's also kind of fun, catchy, and in Hustler's Tale also kind of sexy and just kind of neat to follow. And so the music video for us is a key medium. And so kind of as you're getting to, the music video for Hustler's Tale gave us a resource to mesh the music with in a sense to show the world that the music was creating, to realize that world physically.
Okay.
And
it's its full realization.
Full realization, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
And so
I've seen some short footage of it, and I was really impressed with what I saw.
Yeah. I'm glad you liked it, and I've been just thrilled and flattered and just very enthused by the reaction it's gotten. In fact, that's part of the reason that we're sort of kind of at the next step now, sort of at the next level with a major release and sort of working with major people in the industry, because the music video has had such an extraordinary reception. We filmed it on a single day in February 2017, which was just amazing because I did have a lot of help and just a lot of people I give shout outs for, but it was just a pressure cooker. It was an all day shoot, but with a wonderful crew led by Nick Saldivar, our cinematographer, and help from people in Riverside, California, and wonderful actors and actresses. We were able to put it together, and it became something extraordinary. And it took a while, as these things often happen, just as happened with a novel. It got sort of stuck in post-production, had trouble kind of finding an editor because I had two editors. One got sick, unfortunately, and the other just sort of had technical challenges. But the third editor was a charm. Just she's very brilliant. And
so you kept going, you found that right editor.
Exactly. Tania Harris, very just incredible how sort of our minds meshed. And so we began putting this together, and so this collaboration, dozens of people actually, was a very, very sort of kind of large collaboration, which I directed and produced, and I wound up having to act in unexpectedly because the main actor didn't show up, and I had to step in as the...
What?
Yeah.
You had to step in?
This was life imitating art, yeah.
Wow, for the main character?
The main character, yeah.
So take me through that situation, because I'm sure it wasn't a pleasant experience, so okay, the main actor didn't show up. Yeah. What's going through your mindset, the challenge, and how do you swerve around that?
I'm sweating bullets,
Oh, I bet.
Because it's the day of the shoot. I mean, the thing about these indie music video shoots is that you don't really have that many backups. You don't have a backup budget.
Yeah.
You don't really. I mean, the permits and the insurance. You can only get those for a certain day. You can't just reuse them.
Indie budget, set time. It's got to go.
It's got to go on, right?
On time.
We had to close off a street for it in Riverside, and just a lot of things have to fall into place. It's one of those things where you got 100 things that got to fall into place, and if 2 or 3 of them don't, the whole thing's kind of off.
Oh yeah.
And so
domino effect.
Domino, exactly right. And so it was. It turned out. I mean, the poor guy apparently had a car accident, but. So there was just nothing to be done about it. But his phone was disconnected, so I couldn't even reach him, and that's even worse because I couldn't even find out what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
And the tough thing is, once the cameras start rolling and you fill the shoes of that character, you can't go back.
No.
Unless in rare cases you can go back and redo the scenes if the actor's still there.
But it's like redoing the whole thing all over. So it starts with you in there. You're the guy.
Exactly right.
Moving forward.
Yeah. If anyone wants to learn sort of organizational entrepreneurial skills, sort of kind of producing and directing music videos is a good way to do it, because as the producer, you've got to make sure that all of the people you've contacted are there, that all the in the sense of the different sites you got to make, just the little things can throw off a filming.
Yeah.
And on a single leg, you don't have a whole lot of margin of error. You got to make sure all the doors open in the right place. You got to have contingency plans. And as a director, of course, you also have to sort of direct the actors. And so it's doable if you're sort of kind of on the outside. But if you got to step in the scene, you got to direct from in the scene, and that's tough. And I was not prepared for it.
Intimidated by that? I mean, what's going on in the mindset at that point?
Yeah, well, I mean, I got to say when I first had to make the call, my Nick and Crystal, the cinematographer and AD, were I'm sure they have sort of kind of smiles on their faces remembering this. I wasn't literally sweating bullets, but I was literally sweating, sweat beads that probably would have become bullets, because I was like, man, this is not happening. And,
I would have, yeah.
Because the thing is, I mean, there are cases when directors will direct themselves, but you got to prep that.
And that's pre-planned.
It's pre-planned,
it's like
right.
Tarantino, he'll do it one scene in his movies, and different directors, but you weren't planning that.
I wasn't planning it out, yeah. So I mean, you team direct, and so I wasn't planning that out at all. I mean, I realized it's kind of you just learn from experience. You realize you're never going to get everything right, and you can't sort of paralyze yourself with analysis about this and this and this. You got to just kind of do it. But you realize you probably need to make better backup plans for it. And I did have some backup plans, but I didn't really develop as well as I should have. And so I had to take the reins. And so, yeah, I was essentially when you direct from inside a scene, the only thing that saved my tail there was that I had read, to sort of kind of make sure I was on top of things. I had some mentors, I audited some courses, I read some books about how that's done. Okay. And so you have to call cut from inside the scene. And you have to, the one fortunate thing is, of course, I mean, because I developed the role, I knew the role enough so that I knew when it ended. And so I was able to, I sort of had done a shot list beforehand, which was well organized.
Yeah.
And
you knew most of the lines.
Yeah, exactly. So I knew the lines.
Okay.
But I had to basically, the key to directing inside the scene is that you have to be, and this is, you have to almost take a leap of faith. Because when you're in the scene, you have to be the actor. And I did have some acting experience. It wasn't something totally new.
Right.
I knew how to act. But the thing is, what you got to do is producer, director, and actor, 3 different things. And, producing and directing you can kind of do, but multitasking with acting is tough.
Oh, I'm sure.
So it's
you're doing it on the fly.
Precisely.
This was not planned.
Yeah, so, life imitating art, hustling, swagger, and swerving. I was doing that right there.
You were swerving, man.
Swerving like crazy, man. That was the real deal.
So that, but you got through it. You powered through.
Exactly. We powered through it. We set up the scenes beforehand, and so I would sort of kind of pre-direct in a sense. Pre-direct the actors, say, do this and this when I do this. And sort of kind of, we do what's called the blocking of, wherever he's going to be beforehand. Okay. And then essentially the cinematographer, the director of photography, he will, kind of as part of, what he does as the photographer, he'll sort of kind of shadow direct in a sense. It's kind of a way that once you give instructions, you'll call cut, but he'll sort of kind of, because he sees what's going on.
You can actually see it as it's going.
As it's going through, right. You're in the scene. You're in the scene, right. Wow. So he'll see as it's filming through, and he'll already have comments loaded, and then when you look at the filming afterward, you'll be able to say, okay, we need to do this again, do this and this to get coverage. And so it was, even when this was going on, my heart was thumping, and I was, there's a, I'll just say this before I sing it, but the irony about all of this is the refrain of the song, the chorus is, look alive, kiss the sky, don't be shy, smile wide, because this pen that writes fate is the one we create, in the world that won't stop, if you're down or on top, take the reins, seize control, don't look back or let go. And so I was actually living that on the set where I was recording the video for it. And that's what I had to do. I mean, I had to not look back or let go. I mean,
art coming to life.
It was, yeah. And wow. I was bummed. I mean, I was kind of frustrated about it. I didn't know, and again, I didn't initially know what happened. I initially thought he just sort of bailed, and so I was kind of angry. I was,
kind of feeling, of course, and with all the pressure.
Yeah, and I was thinking, God, I could all just go wrong for this planning. So I had to do that. I had to put it all behind me. Ride the tiger. You
did. Looking back on that, what did you learn from that experience, going through it and powering through?
I realized, and again, fascinating how this feeds back into my medical career too, medical and scientific career, that as good as it is to be prepared and as critical as it is to be prepared, the old Boy Scout motto, and it's something I do when I teach my students too. I say, the key to success in what you do is preparation. You have to kind of do something paradoxical, almost contradictory is maybe a more specific word for it, which is that, although you want to be as prepared as you can for your tasks, and I don't want to say perfectionist, but you want to be on top of every detail, just the complexity of the world in general kind of throws those best best laid plans awry.
Right.
I mean, people call it Murphy's Law, and if anyone in philosophy, Hegel talks a lot about this, but you just... There's just everything about all the interactions, interfaces that go on in the world with a project are hard to predict, and so you have to kind of you have to kind of have this strange, almost contradictory mindset where you prep like crazy. You want to be on top of things and be as scientific about it as possible, but you got to be prepared
to still power through.
Still power through, and it's tough, I think, because I think the personality type that preps and is meticulous kind of has trouble doing that. You tend to feel like
there are people that get stuck. I know exactly what you're saying. They're all practice, but when it comes live, it's like, oh, they freeze.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, something else comes up, and I mean, even people who don't get stage fright, even people who are able to sort of who normally will power through it. The key is that even when you have all that stuff prepped out, when something happens that's not within the plan, that's when it's almost kind of like an emotional response. You feel frustrated and you feel embittered. I think at circumstances, I guess broadly, you're like, man, this is so you feel like it's unfair. You're like, damn it, man, I planned this out. I did everything my teachers told me to do. What the hell?
Did it by the book.
Exactly. Yeah. The strange thing is, you have to like take that leap of faith essentially, and just say, this is the situation, accept it. Look alive, kiss the sky, skipping down to take the reins, seize control, don't look back or let go. I mean, just kind of like in that song, you gotta just do it.
Wow. What I take from it is that, I mean, it was a setback, don't get me wrong, but a couple of things. I mean, I saw, a little bit of the film, and to me, I thought you were just the guy. So, I mean, I wouldn't have known the difference that you were supposed to be the actor or not. You did it well. But the second thing I could take from it is that you were so versed and so prepped in it. You were so in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So when things went awry, one thing went off course, you jumped straight in there and moved straight ahead. Yeah. Didn't let it stop you one bit, because you knew all the parts. You knew all the elements. You were so well prepared.
Right.
And you do have a point of, there's a lot of people out there that they're prep, and then it comes showtime and they freeze. I've seen it.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I mean, for me, I get a little bit of nervous, but I kind of power through it, and it's almost like this adrenaline or electricity running through me. The feeling. But to me, you were so prepped and so on point that even though the actor had the accident and you thought he did it on purpose or what have you, he was just, flaking you out, you jumped in, pulled it off. It's impressive, man. To me, you were deep in it. You were too far gone to be pulled back, and so you were already a driving force at that point.
Yeah. I mean, thanks for pointing that out. And I mean, that again, it brings up a lot of good points, to that. Which is that one, I think, one way to sort of kind of help, I think emotionally get through situations like that is this sort of philosophical belief that even though in a sense, your original plans have been dashed, opportunities have a way of opening. And just as you said, sort of, it turned out my appearance with sort of kind of the trench coat I was in, and just, again, because I had to rehearse the scenes beforehand with the other actors, it actually turned out to work pretty well. And I think perhaps because I was so kind of freaked out about the situation, I really fit the part of Hank. I mean, I was sort of kind of, I was open up other opportunities.
You were method acting without even method acting.
Right, with even meaning to, right.
You were forced into method acting.
Exactly.
And so then it actually pulls off.
It's right, exactly. And so the irony was, this created a situation where other things sort of kind of fell into place. And a lot of athletes, if you've ever been in tennis and you listen to like Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal, they'll say that they get, you make these unforced errors in tennis, and a lot of very good tennis players get frustrated and they lose their game. But you sort of realize that paradoxically, even the most frustrating errors will often open up other opportunities. And it's kind of the same thing with, doing a song or, doing something live like that. I mean, oddly enough, it has a way of opening other things up. To give you another example of something that was maybe even more direct was when I was on Jeopardy. I mean, that was back when I was starting up medical school. I had that experience. I mean, I prepped like crazy. I went in my first show. I hated the categories. Okay. Because you don't know what the categories are going to be.
What are the categories?
So the categories, it's been a while, but I think it was 19th century Portugal, and they had a I was obviously sort of kind of a scientific background, but they had things like they had a category on, I think it was Byzantine art, something that was Byzantine art, some art category, and they had a literature category, and I'd studied up some of that stuff, but just the specific categories, some kind of word game stuff, it's just, some of the entertainment stuff they had at that time, I just wasn't really good at. And I was like thinking, man, I'm going to tank my first show.
Right.
And that's what I had that same experience was, I just sort of kind of shut down that part of myself that was, the little sort of whiny brat inside who complains.
Negative inner voice.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't do this, man. You don't know these categories.
Right.
19th century Portugal.
Yeah, I was thinking, just my luck I get a category like this on there. And
you shut it down.
I shut it down, and again, I just accepted the situation, and I sort of went with it. And again, ironically, that kind of proto-experience with Hustler's Tale video happened in that I sort of kind of, I slipped into a zone, and I feel like I just became mentally awake of angles and perspectives I wasn't before. And I don't even remember sort of kind of taping or looking at the camera or the score. And I just sort of kind of, I caught a second wind, and I just sort of, apparently, what all the viewers said, I kind of blazed through the categories. And it turned out, I said, apparently I still hold, I didn't even know it, but one of my fans told me, I still hold the record for the top debut in Jeopardy history from that experience. And so, I mean, that's the thing, that's what, if there's one skill that you want to develop in anything you do, I mean, whether you're a creative artist or, you have a technical background or a legal background or, if you're in athletics, you have to have this ability to prep and be meticulous, but at the same time, be able to set that aside and just say, okay, this sucks, but it could lead to something interesting. Take that leap of faith and go with it.
You've got to improv live in the moment. Things happen, and you've got to be prepared and just run with it.
Exactly.
Just do your best and overcome that inner negative voice that just, you can't do it. And then just, you know what? Shut up, negative voice.
Yeah.
I'm going to push through.
Yeah. It's my video. I'm going. And it turned out to be wonderful. We the film went out. We went to the film festivals, and we won a half dozen awards, film festival awards with Hustler's Tale.
Wow.
So it's apparently one of the most decorated music videos of in a number of years.
Wow.
So,
is there anything else going to come out of it? Maybe a film? Because I want to see it.
So quite possibly, yeah. We're taking it one step at a time right now. And in fact, ironically, because it's been making the film festival circuit, we haven't been able to release it yet because it is sort of kind of cinematic enough. But we're sort of at the point now where it's made enough rounds that we're getting the okay to put out a version of it, corresponding pretty much around to the release of our first EP in a few weeks. And once we put it out there, we actually have been, or I've certainly been contacted by people interested in what sort of direction you want to take this in. Nice. So kind of not making expectations, but knock on wood if we have it. I mean, if it is sort of kind of cinematic enough, and it's gotten like there's a gold award. It got in one film festival. It's a finalist in several others.
Nice.
If it goes in the right direction, I mean, this is the sort of thing that could be the genesis of an actual sort of feature film. So yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Count me in. Sign me up.
Outstanding.
Let's talk about the band, and I want you to pronounce it because I don't want to get it right. Konundrum.
You got it. Konundrum. There you go.
Beautiful. So you got the EP coming up in, a few months?
Yes, EP actually in a few weeks,
okay.
and possibly by like mid-June. We're actually in the process of getting all the steps together. So actually, when I talked to the ASCAP Expo a few days ago, we were already in the process of getting what's called the WAV files for. If anyone who isn't familiar with the way it comes together, the WAV files, which are the very high fidelity files for the music, we're getting those together to get onto the major distributors, places like iTunes and Spotify and
nice.
eMusic and
how many songs on the EP?
So it's a 4-song EP, although we have both vocal and instrumentals, so it's kind of like 8 for the price of 4, I guess.
Cool.
It's going to be in the order of Hustler's Tale, so starting it out. Our second song called Things Said While We Dream,
mm-hmm.
and then Scary Fairy Tales, which was actually the first one I wrote in full, and then finally sort of our flagship song, Lorelei Part 1, which also has an interesting story connected to that sort of kind of period of travails I was going through, kind of had some inspiration.
Wow. And then the other 4 songs are instrumentals of those songs or instrumentals?
Exactly right.
Okay,
so the
cool.
4 instrumentals. The vocal sets comes first instrumental.
That's cool.
And so
what was that? I find that interesting. How'd you come up with the concept?
Of the band name or the songs?
Or the instrumentals in the regular version?
Yeah, instrumentals in the vocal. So it's a good question. It turns out that one of the earliest compliments we got was that the songs we were putting together had this kind of score-like element, almost cinematic, even without having the music videos to accompany them. And even though the lyrics are very important for the storytelling element, the last 2 songs in there in particular, the last 2 tracks, Scary Fairy Tales and Lorelei Part 1, are almost like scores for a movie or for for sort of kind of a mystery laden sort of enigmatic mystical TV show.
Okay.
And in fact, I'm happy to sort of announce our first sort of breakthrough, our first record deal, first sort of musical breakthrough, has been a licensing contract, which we've signed for potential placement. And so, in part because of that element, that sort of cinematic element, it made sense to have instrumentals as well as vocals to sort of evoke that score-like aspect.
Well, I think you're in that space too, because you do film and you do music. I think you have the insight of knowing which songs could work well.
Absolutely.
As instrumentals as well. So you're kind
Absolutely.
of, you're in these multiple spaces. You have insight on that. That's very cool. So yeah, I want to get to some of the Swagger Swerve questions that we normally ask here. The first one is, what would you say is the biggest positive influence, whether it be a person, a book, a TV, film, that you would say growing up really made you realize, you know what, I'm going to get into this creative space as an adult. This is going to be part of my dream. What would you say is one of the biggest influence in that?
It's a great question. You know, it's a great question. It's something that not only have been asked, but I've asked myself because it's a bit of uncharted territory, and it's a little bit lonely and uncertain. You know, going from a technical background and then sort of merging this with a creative career when I'm still maintaining my day job, my sort of technical, in this case, my medical research career. And so I guess my best inspirations were the people who'd walked this path before, because they gave me kind of sort of a roadmap, not just to show that it's doable, but just to kind of show how to reach this synergy. And I might have mentioned before, but they're sort of kind of both modern and sort of earlier composers who had very medical or technical related careers, and seeing them gave me inspiration.
Wow. And
so interestingly, if this is sort of an interesting sort of bit of information for those lists people put out, guys like Dexter Holland, Offspring, PhD, produces molecular biology at USC.
I've heard that. That's really true.
Yeah, it's really true.
Oh man!
And I had to read to confirm it, but he's the real deal. I mean, he's done some independent, very rigorous, peer-reviewed research in his field. And Brian May even more so, the one of the greatest guitarists ever for Queen.
Yeah, my top 5.
Yeah.
He is what's his background?
Astrophysicist.
What?
At I believe it's Imperial College London.
Oh man!
So interesting. This is a crazy story, but it's real. He actually began his career going for, I guess, the British equivalent, a DPhil of a PhD in astrophysics. And it was around that time that Queen took off, when Freddie Mercury kind of joined up and they were kind of jamming together. And so, for obvious reasons, he had to begin a tour and go on hiatus. Then he came back and he went back into astrophysics.
Did he really?
So, yeah, just incredible.
Practically a rocket scientist and a rock star.
He's the real deal. Yeah.
Unreal.
Those two guys, Tom Schultz with Boston also, who's an engineer with...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, amazing stuff.
But that does make sense, because he did, I think, the first 2 albums in his basement.
You got it, yeah.
Something like that. Which at that time, that was not, I mean, now it's not that big of a deal, but I think at the time they came out, late 70s, early 80s.
Developed his own studio,
to make it sound that good, you got to have skill.
That's right, and he made a lot of his own instruments, right? Yeah. And so those guys, those sort of modern examples were inspiring, and for me, I think even more so, were 2 guys in the 19th century who, it's amazing, we not really household names right now, but they're just so amazing. They should be. One is a guy named Alexander Borodin, and he's sort of kind of classical music fans will know him. But Borodin was a Russian composer of a wonderful piece called Prince Igor. And Prince Igor actually is the basis of the musical Kismet, and it's got really kind of nice, interesting, dynamic music. But what's really kick-ass about him was that he was a very important physician and a chemist.
Oh man!
He would have got, if Nobels weren't around back then, but he would have gotten one almost certainly if they had been. He'd worked on something, chemistry nerds out there. He worked on something called the Alba condensation or Aldol reactions. It was this guy. And also a guy named Theodor Billroth, who was a German surgeon. Essentially, the founder of modern general surgery was this guy Billroth, and he was a very serious, mostly he was sort of an orchestral player, but also got into composition and was a good friend of a number of the great German composers at the time.
Wow! And
so seeing that these guys were, really impactful in their left brain aspect, but in the right brain aspect too.
Brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. I read about their biographies and the synergy, and I realized it's doable. It's not easy, but there is a way to do it, to cross pollinate the two, left brain, right brain, with each other.
Man, very inspiring.
Cool.
My next question would be, how do you find new music? How do you do it? Where do you find it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So new music in terms of what to listen to or what to write, or
new songs, new music. How do you find it?
Yeah, so kind of my channel for that is now that I've sort of kind of gotten a genre for what I like to write for Kant's Konundrum. Again, this hypno-intox genre. I'll tend to go with. I'll start, I guess, with bands that I'm really into. So kind of my playlist will begin with, in a sense, sort of the successors to grunge. The modern alternative, guys like, Imagine Dragons is one of my favorite these days.
Love them. Love
Badasses,
them.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Those guys are sick.
So creative. I mean, Radioactive, just sort of kind of hearing the way they put those chords together.
I love it. I love it.
It's incredible.
I've got all these, elements going on, and I don't know what it is, but it's magic.
Exactly, yeah. It's incredible stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'll often kind of start out with guys like that, and I still listen to Radiohead and Queens of the Stone Age. Also Coldplay sort of in our band, and obviously System of a Down and Incubus, and I mean both the classics and the guys still kind of putting stuff out. But I'll often kind of start there, and I'll get a sense of what kind of new bands on the horizon are putting stuff out. And then also I like to sort of think of this as sort of kind of adding some diversity to the recipe. But I'll often I got my Spotify, and I'll listen to just some of the new stuff that comes from all over the place, because I think one of the cool things about the hypno-intox style that our bands developed is it's sort of eclectic. I mean, we get inspiration from everywhere. So I mentioned, the four key elements: alternative, experimental rock, new metal, and blues that sort of variously work their way into our songs. But even outside of that, I get inspiration from all over the place. From people sort of raise their eyebrows at first when I mention this, but I've listened to both country and rap to get inspiration for lyricism.
Because they both have a lot of lyrics.
Yes, and they're very good at it.
Yes.
If you ask me who I think the most sort of intelligent lyricist out there is right now, if you can guess, but
I don't know.
I think of one. It's a guy who had something really amazing going last year. Kendrick Lamar.
Oh yeah,
Kendrick
man.
Lamar. Yeah. He's
great lyrics.
Incredible lyrics, and just sort of, you can see that the way that he's almost a linguist. He's almost, again, kind of one of my side interests for a while has been languages and linguistics and the way that meaning is imparted to just different sort of kind of phonetics and word sounds. Kendrick has that down. You can tell that he has both the music of the poetry of spoken speech down, and he's able to connect it up to the semantics, to the meaning in a way that's almost unparalleled. It's intuitive for him.
It is.
And so hearing him, I always get inspiration. Sometimes I feel like, when you want to have something creative, the easiest way to get there is to listen to someone else's creative.
Oh, yeah.
Because you get inspired.
Oh, he's very inspiring.
Amazing stuff, yeah.
And then country, too.
Country, too, right. So a lot of the country artists.
They tell a story.
Johnny Cash, exactly, right. And Kant's Konundrum, it's all about telling a story. And that's kind of what we do in our music, too.
Yeah.
And so even though I would say that our style of music, we don't really incorporate rap and country musically, still the spirit of the lyricism very much, I get inspired from rap and country.
It's so funny that you say that. I find that interesting because with my conversation with Blair Daly, he's saying how both worlds are connecting now more than ever before in Nashville.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing it. Every time I hear new country out, it's like, what, they kind of got a little rap in it, and it's cool, and they're connecting, which is kind of interesting.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of musical synergy out there, which is very cool. And
it's killer.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of names that are very well known, I mean, one of those obvious examples is Taylor Swift, who sort of kind of got...
She started over here, now she's over there.
Right.
And she's got a lot of creative sound in between.
She does, right. And it's a good thing, because a lot of if you think about it, a lot of musical styles that we've had historically have been from this cross-pollination of different styles. I mean, it kind of goes...
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll, exactly, yeah.
Rock and roll was a mix.
Chuck Berry, that's right.
Chuck Berry, the original.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, Elvis Presley, the country and the rockabilly and the and the blues and the gospel, right.
I was privileged to see Chuck at age 12.
No kidding.
Virginia, Chesapeake Jubilee.
Nice.
And, just random, my parents brought me, and the next act, Chuck Berry. And I'd heard about it because I knew he was a legend.
Yeah.
But to see him in there doing his thing, doing the chicken scoot, and just killing it on guitar, man.
Yeah.
And at that point, I don't know how old he was, but he was up there.
Yeah.
Still just rocking on stage like he's 25. It was
Never lost it, yeah.
Legend.
Yeah.
legend. So yeah, that had a big impact.
That's awesome.
And, yeah, but yeah, I mean, even like you're saying, rock and roll is kind of a mixture of rhythm, blues, all these things. Um, what would you say is your biggest challenge or resistance in getting your music out there?
The biggest challenge, in part, I think, has been sort of categorizing what we do. Because on the one hand, the fact that we kind of have our own sort of style and genre, hypno-intox created, is very cool for, I mean, kind of like, the early days of grunge. I mean, it's interesting to everyone from sort of record label execs that we've talked to licensees, to, I mean, even just fans. I mean, wow, this is kind of like a musical revolution. At the same time, that makes it kind of hard in a way, because one of the things you sort of find out, both the hard way and the easy way, it's not one or the other, once you get your EP and your music together, is that the business side about it, getting an audience for it has, kind of, is contrary to the creative side in some ways, because on the creative side, you want to be original, you want to be imaginative, you want to do something new, but you have to sort of marry that to the categories, I guess, and the infrastructure that's used for marketing it. In fact, I mean, there are actually sort of kind of marketing philosophers and theorists who have shown that often the most successful types of music and marketing in general, I guess, have sort of a mix of the original and also things that are familiar. And so you have to. It's a tough thing for an artist, because I mean, your music is the songs you put out are your babies, and you want it to be
so personal.
Personal, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you wanted it to go out and just be individual and fledgling. But you have to make a compromise at some point, not with your composition, I should say, but with how with how you're going to reach people. And so you have to sort of you basically have to sort of find ways to change to especially when starting out, to reach an audience that's established, and kind of do things like, particularly with social media of various sorts, open mics, and just sort of kind of get your music out there in a way that both makes it something that people gather around. That's kind of, ever since, cave, Neanderthals were composing music, and, when people gathered around to now, that communal aspect of music is there. And so you've got to find a way to make it communal, link it to other music, just find ways to, again, the music video, create something that links up to something people are already looking for, and then use that as a bridge to bring out the originality of what you've done.
That's cool, man. That's cool. One last question.
Sure.
You are a faceted individual, like I said. You've got the medical, you've got the music, you've got the creative, you've got many different dimensions. And I think there's a lot of people out there that get intimidated because they've been entrenched in one category or career or what have you. You clearly have defied that, said, you know what, I'm not just a doctor, I'm not just a musician, I'm not just a filmmaker, I'm not just an author of a book. What do you say to those people that say, I don't have the energy to do these things because I'm already in this, I got my feet planted in this career? What do you say to those people that say that they don't have the energy? Because clearly you do.
So one of my favorite little witticisms on that topic, it's a very good one to bring up, is that there are as many paths to a music career as there are stars in the sky. And what I mean by that is that one of the cool things about a creative career in general, and I think music in particular, because of the personal nature of the way that songwriting takes place, is that there's no sort of one way, there's no sort of garden path to creating music. It's very much, it's individualized, and while there are some sort of kind of common pathways that get the music out, the actual composition, the gumption, the swagger and swerve that get get you from the initial germ of an idea out to a song that people love to hear, is going to be very much dependent on your particular experiences. And the vast majority of musicians, I think, start out and focus in that direction. And I mean, if I had a choice, my idea of being a musician, I would have started that path too, because I think a lot of my difficulty in the past 4 years was having to learn or relearn a lot of the basic skills of composition and just the harmonics and just sort of bringing everything together.
Yeah.
That I kind of wish I had held on to when I was kind of just interested in music as a kid. And I was able to do it eventually, but every sort of musician at some point has a point of struggle. I feel like there's
sure.
some kind of royal road to it, and sometimes the aspects to which you struggle are the source of inspiration, and something in your background is that inspiration. In my case, I never, again, this sort of tag I get for my website, this polymath. I didn't really start out intending to do this. So basically, all these skill sets I developed were just hustling to make money when I had to sort of kind of improvise when I couldn't work as a physician for a while, or just to make extra money in college even. And so I wasn't really kind of starting out doing this. It was kind of out of necessity. And I think sort of because of that, my interest in music developed organically. And in a sense, it was because of a period when I couldn't practice as a doctor, when I couldn't, do what I had in mind originally, that the creative spirit of the writing and then the music came out.
Did you get any resistance from your friends in the medical community that says, this music stuff, Wes, what are you doing? Come on, man.
Surprisingly little. I worried about that a lot.
Yeah.
I have to see, it's just sort of an irony. If anything, before I even talked to anyone, I was my own harshest critic. I was saying, this is crazy. Working, even before I learned about, guys who actually did do it, like Bill Roth the Prince Igor composer. Before I sort of had studied what they did. I didn't really sort of know of examples that have been done before. And before Borodin and Bill Roth and Dexter Hall and those guys, it seemed like such a conflict. And in truth, you have to specialize so much in what you do these days that it's difficult to pull off in practice. But what I eventually sort of kind of found out is that sometimes circumstances will sort of arrange themselves in a way that you can develop this kind of a synergy that makes them work. And it is true that there are times when I got to put everything else aside and do one or the other. Right now, for example, Ryan Chen, wonderful guitarist at Konundrum, and I, we can't really tour because we are busy. He's sort of headed to medical school, and I'm working. I'm actually finishing up a fellowship right now, working on a paper for essentially new drug discovery, drug screening, which is kind of my long-term passion. Nice. I have had those points when I've had to set one or the other aside. You do have to be able to do that. But, I have found that, there are these openings when, if you really determine it, you can pursue this passion. And the music video, for example, was pretty much done, prepped and done during the holidays. And a lot of our open mics were done, on holiday weekends. And so
it's all about planning.
It's planning,
right?
It's understanding, right, exactly. It's realizing that the synergy sometimes works. And again, mentioning that I'm often more productive as a doctor and researcher, sort of trying to figure out new ways to develop and tailor drugs, personalized medicine, when I'm thinking musically. And in turn, a lot of my music is helped when I do a lot of computer programming for bioinformatics, but I'll get stuck in writing a program in Python or R, and I'm like, damn, I can't get through this. But I'll step away, and I'll actually write better music that way. And so, if it's something that you really do feel passionate about, if it's something that you want to bring to the world, you can certainly do it. And to my pleasant surprise, the reaction's been uniformly positive. As long as you sort of kind of keep in mind first things first. As long as you do have to sort of set up. You have to sort of recognize that there are going to be times when you got to put the music aside.
Yeah.
To do your main career. As long as you sort of figure out ways to do that and are open about it, people love it. And especially with Hustler's Tale kind of brought this to a new level because, as I said, I was not expecting to act in the video at all. Since I've been in the video, the fans are all like, "Oh, you guys are like Foster the People. You got to be in the videos." But that I was not expecting to be in front of the camera for that. And the actress Emily Soria, the star of the video, was wonderful. And there's some very sort of kind of racy and just sexy scenes in it.
Really.
And I was not expecting to be in those scenes. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, here I'm talking at medical conferences and I'm teaching students often, and I'm going to be appearing in a sort of a racy music video. But the funny thing is, once people sort of realize that you're serious about it, you're not dabbling in it, but you're actually serious and you create something good and interesting.
Yeah.
They're always, if anything, a lot more fascinated at the synergy you're able to create. And Brian May, I feel like, Dexter Holland, those guys sort of kind of found a way to do that. They found a way to create the synergy. And it's a difficult path in many ways, but it's a nucleus for creativity in others, and I think people can see that. To my pleasant surprise, my colleagues have been cool about it.
Well, you pull it off well. Not everybody can do it.
Do my best.
One of those rare diamonds. Well, Dr. Wes, it's been a privilege, and I want to say thank you so much. And I'd love to have you back on again, man. I'm looking forward so much to the band and the film and everything else, man. It's exciting.
Yeah, Geoff, I'd love to be back, man. And I'm ironically, now the music's doing well. Some of the teaching jobs and things that have taken up a lot of my time, I'm able to sort of manage those a little better and just keep a focus on the research and on the music. And so I'm going to be around here, and I look forward to your show and everything you do, and love hearing your podcast too.
Awesome. Keep that swagger, keep that swerve.
Absolutely, Geoff. Yeah.
Thank you.